financial literacy can't save us, then why are y'all having us talk about it again? And even if financial literacy can't fix all of our problems, doesn't it play a role in remediating the impacts of racism on Black people and our money? And finally, how can we use financial literacy as a tool to dismantle the inequitable systems that have kept us in all of this broke ish? Well, I'm glad you asked because we're talking about it after the break.
Brokers, welcome to another episode of Brokish, where we talk about the unbelievable ish this country has done to keep us broke. Now, here are your hosts, Amber and Erika.
Hello, brokers. I'm Amber.
And I'm Erika.
And today on Brokish, we have a special guest for y'all.
I know. I always love when we have guests, Amber. I do. Not that you are boring or not that I don't love to hear what you have to say, but I do appreciate when there are other people who can share the stage with us.
Y'all know that's not what she says to me in private, but yes, I'll agree in public. I feel the same way.
But
She don't want to hear nothing I have to say. That's what I mean.
Before we get to our guest, though, let me talk about what I've been up to, Amber. Normally, I wait for you to ask, but I just get sick of waiting so long because sometimes it takes too long to ask me. So I'm going to just say what I've been up to. Y'all know I have been teaching this semester, and it is so hard. I just did not know that teaching would be this hard. I thought, you're the professor, you get in front, you say some blah, blah, blah. And then, 45 minutes later, it's kind of over. But let me tell you, it has been such a challenge to really get my students to engage. And I'm really feeling sad about it. Like, that's really the thing. I'm really feeling sad about it. I'm starting to even question, like, is teaching for me? So
are you being hard on yourself, though? I think you're being hard.
I don't know if I am, but it has really been weighing on me because it has been really, really hard. And so still I persist, right? That's what we do. We keep moving and, hopefully I'll be able to teach another semester too, just to kind of see how it's going. But it's been a challenge, more so than I ever thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I think you're being hard on yourself. I think it's a reflection of the material and people's sort of reluctance to go into what is it called, societal problems or
Social
societal
problems.
illness. Yeah, I mean, listen, I feel like you would have to get the perfect group of students for that to be. I mean, most people are just gonna sit in there jaded, not wanting to say anything, or you either gonna have people on the extremes of both ends. Those one or two people that are
The little
talking.
Ambers who keep raising their hand.
Yes. Come on,
Yeah.
class participation. Hallelujah. So, but no, I think you're being hard on yourself.
Well, thanks. We'll see. But you just got back from vacation, though.
I did, and I returned from vacation, brokers, and since we are a family, y'all, I got laid off on vacation. In real life. In real life. I mean, speaking of being broke, okay? Does anybody need a lawyer?
Amber, I didn't even know we were going to talk about this. Like, I didn't know you were going to mention this. I'm a little bit stunned here.
I mean, listen, by the time this airs, hopefully things will be all right. But I definitely got laid off on vacation in real life.
That is, what is that even like? Like, what do you feel like when you're just minding your own business and then they call and they're like, it's not working out? Like, were you in the middle of a margarita? Like, what?
No, child, we was packing to come back. Okay. And I saw the teams meeting pop up. And so I thought it was like for the team. The teams meeting was for the team. So when I got on the call and it was just
you were doing like this,
the two of us.
Everybody else?
I was like, I'm not even that early because the call was supposed to start at 11:20. So I got on at 11:19. So I'm like, I'm not even that early. And by the time I like realized Oh, she was
I'm
done.
the
Sis
meeting.
was done. Yes, I am the meeting. I am the moment. I am the meeting. And so I got laid off in approximately 2 minutes. That's why we be telling y'all, don't be system, being loyal to these. That lady didn't even turn her camera on and laid me off. She laid me off. Her picture laid me off in two in 2 minutes. Y'all, I'm not even in my Cat Williams zone. I'm telling the truth. That's why this is so funny. That lady's picture laid me off. I was on another phone call and I was trying to get off the other phone call. Okay. And before I could get off the other phone call, the other lady hadn't even finished her sentence. The lady was done laying me off. Okay. Done.
Well, Amber, I do hope that you don't think this is a reflection on you because you're a
Of
brilliant
course
attorney,
not.
of course. I mean,
Of
we
course
all know
not.
that. Okay.
Of course
Okay.
not. I'm gonna
So
be
I
just
hope.
fine. This has been a great point of humor. I think it's gonna be just fine. I actually am looking forward to having some time on the holidays to catch my breath, take a break because I've been working for 15 years. I went into labor with both my kids in the courthouse in the middle of trial. I ain't
Right.
never took a break from work ever.
Right.
So I'm actually looking forward to catching my breath. So I'm all right. I'm all right.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, I'm sure the brokers are sending you lots of love and care.
Yes.
So we're going to move on from Amber's misfortune or maybe Amber's fortune. Who knows? Like, who knows what's going on with that? But like Amber said, we have a guest with us today. So I am going to bring him on now. All right. Today with us, y'all, we have John Hope Bryant. He is an entrepreneur. He's a sought after thought and philanthropic leader. And he's referred to as the conscience of capitalism by leading Fortune 100 CEOs. And he is the founder, chairman, and CEO of Operation Hope, Inc., the largest not for profit and best in class provider of financial literacy, financial inclusion, and economic empowerment tools and services in the United States for youth and adults. And Operation Hope is working to level the opportunity playing field, connecting communities to the private sector through inclusive capitalism at scale. So Mr. Bryant has a big long bio, and I'm not going to read it because he is going to let us know who he is. But Mr. Bryant, we are so happy to have you here on Brokish and just happy to welcome you to our show. So, even though I've shared a few things in your bio, but for the brokers who may not know you, may not know Operation Hope, can you give us more just background on who you are and what Operation Hope is?
I'm not very good at talking about myself because I have to do it all the time. It's actually quite boring. Um, but I'll give you the basic sketch of what we've achieved. Operation Hope is the largest. So I've built 50 companies, three of which are the largest of their kind in the country in their category. So the largest financial literacy coaching organization in America. There's 1,500 offices, 48 states, 400 full-time employees, thousands of volunteers, 5,000 partners, $4.5 billion invested in underserved neighborhoods through our partners for home ownership and small business ownership mostly. The largest nonprofit, I believe, I don't know this to be the absolute fact, I believe it's the largest nonprofit entity creator of black businesses in America. The 1 million Black Business Initiative created after George Floyd's murder has inspired, created, nurtured, and supported over 450,000 Black businesses in 4 years. That's about 12% of all Black businesses in America. It's called 1MBB. What I do know as a fact is that we're the only nonprofit allowed to operate inside of a bank branch in U.S. history ever. And that's getting the bank out of the no business and back into the yes business. By half of Black people have a credit score below 620. Not poor people, all Black people, which means that when half of Black people wake up in the morning, or when Black America wakes up in the morning, half of us are locked out of the free enterprise system because you cannot get a decent auto loan at 620. You cannot get a mortgage below a prime mortgage below 680 or 700. You can't get a small business loan because it's risky credit below 700 or probably more like 750. So we're fighting Black America is talking about things that are important, but really are not the things that can transform a culture. Getting the credit score up to 700 for the culture would transform the culture because you'd have access to capital across the board. It also would stabilize communities. Also, if you live to 81 years of age versus 500 credit score, which is 61 years of age, you live 20 years longer, 15 minutes apart between a 500 credit score neighborhood and a 700 credit score neighborhood. And we're moving credit scores from 500 to 700. And it's the largest budget organization for a Black male founded run organization in the country, $75 million on the nonprofit side. And then Bryant Group Ventures has Promise Homes Company that I built and sold for $121 million. That's the largest minority owner of single family rental homes in America. And et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. We have a media platform that does about 1.5 million views a week on financial inclusion. It goes on and goes on and goes on. As you can see now, that's why I don't like talking about myself. I prefer somebody else. It's rather boring. I mean, it's data points and they're important, but I'd much rather somebody else say it than me.
I get that.
Clients and the customers and the work is seen every time I walk in the airport. You know, somebody screams out the credit score to me whenever I'm in the airport.
Oh, wow. Wow.
The TSA agents are always telling me their credit score when I come through security. Or, you know, somebody stopping me in a grocery store. Thanks for making my family a homeowner. Or, you know, I was just voting. Somebody stopped me in the voting line. You know, that's the stuff to me that's really important.
So what happened?
Sorry, Amber. Go ahead.
I was just going to ask, what was the moment for you when you had the realization that you really wanted to focus your work around financial literacy? Like, what experience did you have that made you realize that there was a gap or a deficiency in that area for Black people?
Well, your day's not about God or love. Your day's about money. You know, my mom and dad divorced over money. I was 4 or 5 years old. They had domestic abuse in front of me over money. I mean, I'm talking about fisticuffs. They got divorced because my dad took the $4,000 my mother had saved to send my brother to a college of his choice, and he went to go waste it. Well, he didn't think he was wasting it, but my dad confused cash flow with profit. My dad confused cash with wealth. Black people obsess about cash flow, the bag, the dollar, the money. It's completely irrelevant. You build wealth in your sleep. You make money during the day, but all it is just making a living. You can only build wealth in your sleep. So when my mom and dad had that situation, and my mom knew she had to leave my dad because that was the oldest of her 3 children that was trying to go to a college of his choice with the $4,000 she raised. And when he took that money, she just presumed or assumed that the rest of us were going to get what Donnie, my big brother, got, which was no choice. So she divorced him, went to go live with her girlfriend, which she called my auntie. The guy who saved my life when I was living with her girlfriend, the boyfriend of her girlfriend, the guy who saved my life, he was doing drugs around the corner to make some extra money to take care of his family and ours. My mother would have helped him, financial literacy conversations, had he said, "Hey, I'd love to have you here. I can't take care of 2 families. Can you help out?" My mother would have helped out. She was working. She was only staying there to save money to buy a house, the down payment. But he didn't ask, pride. And he was murdered in front of me over drugs. The guy who really controlled the neighborhood around the corner didn't like that he was doing part-time work. So they murdered him in front of me. I mean, I saw it, and I was 6 or 7. And then when I was 9 years old, my mom moved to Compton and bought a house in Compton when I was in 15502 South Fraley. You always remember homes that you own, always. You don't remember apartments. You remember homes that you own. And my next door neighbor was a drug dealer named Tweet, and he controlled his family because he controlled the money. He was 18 years old. and my best friend who I met, who was really, really smart, but didn't have good role models. Both of them were murdered together. So that was 9 years old. And then I went into school and taught and got a financial literacy course from a home economics class, which doesn't exist anymore in schools. And a white banker came in my classroom and taught financial literacy from Bank of America. And he had a red tie and a white shirt and a blue suit, beautifully stitched. He about 6'2". And I remember asking him, what do you do for a living? And how'd you get rich legally? And I was completely serious because I never saw a man with a suit on, a white man who wasn't a detective, and it was a really not good suit. So a guy showed up in the middle of the day on a salary. My mother had an hourly job, 2 15-minute breaks and lunch. She showed up at school when I messed up. So a guy showed up in the middle of the day on his own schedule in a beautiful car in the parking lot that was legal with tags on it, completely relaxed, had a business card, said 16th floor on it. There's no 16th floor in Compton. There's 6 floors. It's a courthouse. I'm like, man, who are you? And he said, I'm a banker and I finance entrepreneurs. That was it. I was like, man, I don't know. I have no idea what an entrepreneur is. I have never heard that word my entire life.
Mm-hmm.
I've been in school. No one's ever taught me the word entrepreneur. Build something out of nothing. French word, create value. I'm like, whatever that is, you're financing it, is legal. I don't get shot or killed with like the guys around the corner when they loan you money. Oh, I'm in. And then I asked him, so are there other bankers like you that lend poor people money? Yeah, there's hundreds of thousands of bankers in America. Really? And your job is to loan poor people money, and all we got to do is show you that we're credit worthy. Yeah. And I don't get dead if I don't pay you back. No. That's Operation Hope. And so you look at my grandmother owned a shotgun shack in East St. Louis. My mother bought and sold 7 homes. I bought and sold 700 homes. Well, I still own 38% of the company that bought it from me, but I used to own the whole company, and I'm about to do 7,000 now. That's my next goal. And my grandfather was a sharecropper. My dad was a businessman. I'm an entrepreneur. So it's all just role modeling, and it's if you hang around 9 broke people, you'll be the 10th. The opposite is also true. And it's having the right business plan for your life. And so financial literacy, I believe, is a civil rights issue of this generation.
You actually put that idea, that term, in a fairly recent article that you wrote for CNBC, right? Where you talk about financial literacy as the civil rights issue of this generation. And so one of the things, so I'm a grad student, right? So I'm in school studying sociology. And one of the things that I study is financial literacy, right? So I'm very interested in the perceptions, the benefits of financial literacy, the payoffs of financial literacy. So as I think about the economic and political environment that we're in, as I think about the things you mentioned, like the racial wealth gap, as I think about the credit score gap, as I think about insert financial issue and there's a gap as relates to Black and white, how do you come to this conclusion that financial literacy is the civil rights issue of this generation? And how do we look at all the things going on in the world, right? And say to ourselves that financial literacy can be a pathway to us being able to fight against all those things?
Well, the question is the answer. Because you're very bright, you're a grad student, your mama didn't raise no dummy, you're very intelligent, I can tell that. Both of you are very intelligent. You're having a very thoughtful conversation before I came on, and you're running a very professional podcast, and you're going to school, and you have exposure, and yet you asked a question that answers itself. So in other words, this is hiding in plain sight. We can't do this podcast without you guys paying for equipment, a streaming platform, headphones, mobile phones, cell phone bills, email account, which the government didn't give you. I mean, literally, you can't do this without understanding or at least having access to money and capital. Everything's a business model. The military is a business model. The government is a business model. People say, "Oh, I don't like capitalism. I just like the government." Really? Where do you think the money? Where do you think the government gets its money from? It's taxpayers. Well, I don't want to work for the private sector. I want to work for a nonprofit. Where do you think the nonprofit gets its money from? Gets it from capitalists or gets it from government? Where does the government gets it from? Right? Gets it from capitalism. 88% of all jobs in America are free enterprise jobs. 88%, 12% of government. And places where that's the opposite are in trouble. Most of that's the Middle East, Africa, the third world countries where most of the jobs are government jobs. And that's really a translation. That's criminality, basically. It's you cannot run an economy unless you have an economy. Or put it another way, even if you want to distribute money like a socialist, you have to first collect it like a capitalist. Your hair is done very nicely. You probably ran a brush through it or a comb through it this morning. Well, that brush or a comb was created not by the government. It's created by an entrepreneur like me. And you're willing to pay, I'm making this up, $50 for something that costs probably $10 to make because you're solving a problem. All capitalism is problem solving. Entrepreneurship and capitalism is an extension of entrepreneurship. But all entrepreneurship is solving problems. So you're willing to pay to have your hair look a certain way, whether it's going to a nail salon or hair salon or beauty salon or getting whatever the thing is. It's worth it to you. The nail salon, that's a great example. You're willing to pay $100 for somebody to put $7 worth of acrylic on your fingers.
That's Amber, not me though. She's willing to pay. I'm not willing to pay, but anyway.
I do it, by the way. I go to get a manicure and pedicure. The point is that everything, literally, I'd like to say when you get up in the morning, 24 hours a day is a financial transaction. You go to sleep. You didn't go to sleep on a government pillow. You bought it. You didn't go to sleep on government sheets. The government didn't pay your utility bill. The government's not paying your phone bill. Your phone was bought by you. Literally, like, if you think about it, money is all around us, but we don't understand money. It's everywhere, but we have no clue about it. Ambassador Andrew Young, who was on the balcony when Dr. King was assassinated, my mentor, my spiritual father, 92 years young today, lives here in Atlanta, Georgia, the last living lieutenant, said to live in a system of free enterprise and not to understand the rules of free enterprise must be the very definition of slavery. But I'll go even deeper. Black people, Native American Indians, and poor whites, out of 200 plus ethnic groups in America, are the only three groups that never got the memo on money. Think about that for a minute. African Americans, not all blacks. Black Nigerians got the memo. Black Jamaicans got the memo. Black South Africans got the memo. They come here. Black Africans, Nigerians, Bohemians, whatever, come here. They got the memo on money and they have higher self-esteem, which is a whole other conversation. Lower self-esteem is tied to slavery. And they, within 2 or 3 years, they're saving some money, they're buying a house, or they're starting an Uber business, whatever, and they're off and running on the American dream. But the three groups that were denied the 5 pillars of success, so my last book is Financial Literacy for All. It's number 1 in business finance in the country. Been number 1 for 8 months. And my book before that, Up From Nothing, the book from that before that's called The Memo, the 5 pillars of success from the memo. If you have these 5 pillars of success, no matter who you are, no matter what color, no matter what background, you're gonna be massively successful. If you have 4, you'll be reasonably successful. If you have 3 of those, you won't be in a surviving mindset. 3 of the 5. Black people were denied all 5. Native American Indians were denied all 5. Poor whites denied all 5. And this also underscores that race is not everything. Because if race was everything, you wouldn't have poor whites and rich whites. You just have rich whites. So poor whites were not given these memos either. And it's as much education shoved down your throat, financial literacy, the language of money, how capitalism works, family structure and resiliency, self-esteem and confidence, role models of the environment. And so our Jewish brothers and sisters, as an example, got the memo on money. So even though they've been discriminated against for hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of years, maybe even thousands of years, depending how you interpret things like the Bible, still they rise. Because the only true freedom is financial freedom. Every other freedom can be taken away from you. So how does that relate to your question? You make money during the day, you build wealth in your sleep. 92% of all of Black Americans' economic activity, which would be one of the biggest countries in the world, 1.7 trillion dollars a year. 92% is consumption.
So to go back to the idea of like financial literacy, and maybe it would be helpful if you gave us sort of your definition of what financial literacy is, right? Like what you consider that to be, because it sounds like there's a lot of conflation between financial literacy and capitalism in general. Are you using these terms synonymously?
No, there's no conflation. This is I love this conversation because it is it is really laying bare how you can be incredibly smart, which you guys are, and a lot of your listeners are, and not have a clue what somebody is saying to you about the system that's running the world. And this is why you can be really smart and be gained by this system. So financial literacy is the language of money. And it is like Oprah on money. It's about money, yes, but money's emotional. So if you just got a basic course on mechanics like 401ks, that's not going to do it, because your money ties into your self-esteem or your lack thereof. It ties into your role models. It ties into your confidence. It ties into your priorities, because a lot of success is habits. So do you know what percentage of Black people own a home?
Probably like 48, 50%.
No, it's 40 to 44%, but still it's bad. So white America has an average home ownership of 75%. So between the best number, 45%, and the average number for white, 75%, it's called a delta in financial terms. We call it a delta. The difference is 30%. There's your wealth inequality in the 21st century right there. Like, don't have any other conversation. Just that one, because the number one way you build wealth in America is home ownership. Number one way, without question. The whole tax system in America is designed to encourage, support home ownership. What percentage of us own stocks and bonds? It's also incredibly small, between 18 and 30%. What percentage of us have a life insurance policy? What percentage of us have a will? What percentage of us have income producing property? What percentage of us have savings? What's our average net worth? So in Boston recently, just to separate this thing out even further, Boston had a front page article. They calculated net worth in Boston amongst all people. White folks were almost 200,000. Caribbean blacks were $1,200, which is horrible. African Americans were $7.
Yep.
So if it was just black, it would either be $7 or $1,200, but it wouldn't be both. So clearly there was a different. So racism's real, because there's your difference between $1,200 and almost 200,000. Racism is real, but the $7 or $1,200, that's another thing, and that has to do with your mindset. So the folks with $1,200 will be $2,400. My guess is, if you track the trend. In fact, if you look at average incomes in America, Africans and Indians, as in from India, are some of the highest income earners in America, even more than white. But once again, African Americans are at the bottom of the ratio. There's nothing wrong with us. We're brilliant. When the rules are published and the playing field is level, we succeed. So the arts, professional sports, faith. I was just with Bishop Jakes Friday speaking at this conference. He's like the Pope of the black world. Faith and politics. Rules are published, playing field is level. Capitalism, free enterprise, economics, ownership, opportunity, markets, which is all a byproduct of financial literacy, by the way. Financial literacy is the soil that all these things grow from. We don't understand that. We were denied that understanding. And we've been literally looking for love in all the wrong places. So you can be a rapper and be broke in 5 years, having made a lot of money, because we confuse money with wealth. Again, that cash flow. It's going to flow right out your hands. You can win the lottery. 70% of those who win the lottery bankrupt in 5 years. By the way, of all races. Professional sports, you've seen it. $100 million contract, $50 million. It doesn't matter. Broke 5 years. 70% of those in the NFL and NBA, read black people, are bankrupt 5 years after retirement. And by the way, I'm divorced. So all this goes back to the same theory. Like, nothing's wrong with us. I just told you, where the rules are published and the playing field is level, we absolutely kill it. But we don't live in a regular democracy. We live in a capitalist democracy. We live in a free enterprise democracy. That is America, the biggest economy in the world. So if you don't understand what we're talking about, not you, if the average person doesn't understand the language of money in a world designed around money, how can you not get clocked? How can you not be played? How can you not be abused? Think about a low-wealth neighborhood that you care about. Just get in your mind right now. Because you go to my Hope Financial Wellness Index, put in your zip code, I'll tell you exactly what your credit score is. I've measured every zip code in America by credit score. I'm doing this American Aspiration Tour with these mayors around the country. I've done 6 Black mayors so far. Everybody's always stunned. 500 credit score neighborhood. Here's what you see. Check casher, next to a payday loan lender, next to a rent-to-own store, title lender, liquor store, pawn shop, and a church down the street. And by the way, a fast food restaurant. Now, it doesn't matter whether it's poor white or poor Black or poor Latino. It's 500 credit score. That's financial illiteracy. And it's a surviving mindset. You live to 61 years of age. It's typically a 60% high school graduation rate, high levels of violent crimes and property crimes, low levels of college education, low levels of traditional businesses, low levels of home ownership, about 28%. It's completely uniform. You go to a 700 credit score neighborhood with Blacks there, by the way, a Black 700 credit score neighborhood, just to underscore this, 2-parent households, 96% graduation rate, which means you went to college, low levels of all crimes, high levels of home ownership, high levels of small business ownership, because those folks got the memo.
So what I'm wondering, because I do think one thing you hit spot on is that there are certain fields where the rules are published and the playing field is even. And so how do people then use financial literacy as a tool to accomplish that? Because I think about, even for example, someone like myself, who I'm an attorney. I went to a prep school here in Dallas, and so my network was enriched by that. And
Mhm.
so there have been a lot of things that my colleagues me that have helped me to acquire a lot of information, but that information hasn't always translated into a substantial change, because even when I know what I know, I'm still running into the same barriers I was running into when I didn't know it. And
Mhm.
so I guess the question for me
I'll say the
is,
question.
yeah, how do we use the tool, or why does the tool itself um sort of create that even playing field and those rules that are published? Because I feel like, for a lot of people, even if they knew what to do, if they don't have no money and the system is sort of set up for them to fail, they're still going to fail.
So it's an excellent question. My mother, who I mentioned, Juanita Smith, just passed on last year. When she passed on a year ago at 88 years old and 11 months, high school education, worked an hourly job for 32 years. So the person you're talking about made $15 an hour, made Don Douglas aircraft, had $1 million net worth. So,
but at that time, your mother could buy a house in Compton 40 years ago on a $15 or $10 an hour salary, and that was a possibility. If I have that same job today, I can't do that.
Not true. It's just not true. You can buy a house in Atlanta. I'm in Atlanta now. You can go to the suburbs of Atlanta. I know I own 700 homes being here in Florida. I'm not like talking concept. So the guy you're talking to now, I went from the bottom quartile of poverty, the top bottom quartile, to the bottom of the top 1% in one generation. I'm still a young guy. And I did it based on what I'm talking to you about, which is understanding how markets, money, and financial literacy. I'm not a professor or a motivational speaker, or my payroll is $1.5 million every 2 weeks. Payroll. I got to make $350,000 a day. Like, you can't play around with this. It's not like, oh, this is conceptually. I literally have built a $100 million a year enterprise and $4.5 billion of flow by understanding how the system works. And I came from Compton in South Central, and I had a high school education, a GED degree out of out of Santa Monica High School. So my mother was just my mother was just doing what she was doing in that time. This is this time, and it's the same situation. That I'll give you an example. I mean, I can make anybody millionaire in 5 years. Anybody. So you're making you go to one of your relatives who makes $36,000 a year, $38,000 a year. They got 3 children. Every black person has somebody in their family making $38,000 or $40,000 a year and has 2 or 3 kids. Just look around. And I want you to go to them. Here's financial literacy. And you say, this John Bryant guy said some mess to me. He said that you haven't got your EITC. I'll bet you, I don't know, $1,000 that if you ask 5 of your relatives that fit this profile, 4 of them will say, what are you talking about? What's that? EITC is free money. So if you work in America, this is Amber. This is the bamboozled quote from Malcolm X. We've been bamboozled. We've been tricked. We've been fooled. Right. So if you work in America, the federal government owes you a bonus for working. It's not a handout, called EITC, up to $65,000 a year. The sweet spot is the lower the income, the more the kids. So if you have $38,000 to $40,000 and 3 kids, government owes you $7,000 cash. Now, Amber, if you've never filed, and 1 out of 4 Americans who qualify for it never asked for it, $20 billion a year, read black people, by the way, it's retroactive for 3 years. That's almost $20,000. So if you make $38,000 a year and the government hands you $20,000, and by the way, there's local EITC, there's state EITC, there's down payment assistance programs. Let's just start with this. EITC, I just gave you a down payment for your $100,000 condo or home in a progressive neighborhood. Now, you don't want to go, I'm not talking about Manhattan. I'm not talking about LA. Money's already made there. Wealth's already been built there. That's just lifestyle. You need to go to a B or C city. I came to Atlanta 15 years ago where you could buy a house with a tree in the roof for $15,000 across from a home of $500,000. Now, you can still buy a house with a tree in the roof, but $65,000 here. And rehab it, rent it. So rehab it and own it. Then buy another house with the equity 2 years later from that first house, rehab it and rent it. I'm talking about Clayton County. I'm talking about Fulton County. I'm talking about all these counties, the 7 counties surrounding the 10th largest economy in the U.S., which is Atlanta. You can still buy a home that needs to be rehabbed for less than $100,000. But even if you buy a home for $250,000 with a 5% mortgage on it, which is a 700 credit score, by the way, that's still less than rent. That's still less than rent. And you can, by the way, you can Airbnb 2 of the rooms if you want to. So this whole concept that we can't.
If 50% of us don't have the 700 credit score, how do they do it?
You come to Operation Hope. What do? I raise credit scores. I'm raising credit scores 54 points in 6 months, 120 points in 24 months. I'm lowering your debt by $3,800. I'm increasing your savings by $1,200 to $2,400 in 6 months. I've got 4.5 million clients. Yes, today, not concept. That's why Operation Hope is getting 1.5 million views on social a week. That's why there's such a movement around financial literacy, because this is the one thing. The one thing. What was slavery? Slavery wasn't personal. Slavery was about money. That was about free labor and taking agricultural geniuses from Africa to work in dead soil in harsh conditions in the South that was very much like the African condition. Well, who was bringing it that? Africans. So it was really the wealthiest city in the world in 1840 was Natchez, Mississippi, by the way. Wall Street was actually in Montgomery, Alabama. Lehman Brothers, all these companies. By the way, don't trust the thing I'm saying. Look it up yourself. All Wall Street in New York was in Alabama, Mississippi, because that's where the money was. And it moved to New York because that's where the money went, and slavery ended. So what I'm saying is we're looking for love in all the wrong places. We're literally having the wrong conversation. So let me give you, Erika and Amber, you asked another, I like answering specific questions. Well, what are these tools that, no matter because of racism and bias, what are these things, John, these fundamentals that will make me win? Get your credit score to 700. Because if you go to the computer at midnight, the computer don't know what race you are. The computer just says yes when you ask for credit and your credit score is 700. I know my credit score is 800.
Even though there are ample examples of organizations who have systemically discriminated against Black people who have equal credit scores to white people. Like, even though we've seen how that's played out in our financial systems.
So every time there's an example of that, I debunk it. So let me tell you, if you were in 19, by the way, don't trust me in this. Just go on. Luckily, all the stuff is online. Like, just search my name and credit score and look at the comments. If you come to me, I will approve you myself. I use my own balance sheet. And what I've said for 32 years, if the bank turns you down, after you do what we say to get your credit score up, debt down, savings up, because I know what the bank criteria is. If the bank turns you down, Erika, I fund the loan. In 32 years, I've never had to fund a loan. Because at the end of the day, in 1920, was there a racist bank? Yes, it was called the Bank of Joe Blow. It was a family in Alabama, and they hated Black people. And they only lent money to their white friends. But today, banks are publicly traded, and the color is green. It's not black or white. It's not red or blue. They got to make every loan that they can. The problem is, and what I tell you earlier, half of Black people have a credit score below 620. So what looks like racism actually is we're actually not bank qualified.
No, I'm talking about for people, if you look at statistics for Black people and white people with the same credit scores, that Black people are denied for more loans than white people, like of similar situations. So I'm not talking
They
about
pay a
like
higher rate.
720, they pay higher rates. Like,
that is not untrue statistically, but literally, you have the issues of debt to income ratios. You can have a high credit score and no income. You can go to a mortgage broker and not a bank. There are a lot of reasons why you can have somebody who gives you a bad appraisal because racism.
You're Black.
Right.
Yes. Look, I'm not sure what conversation we're having here. Everybody gets discriminated against. Everybody. So racism exists, but I'm just telling you, I've proven is a barrier you can get over. So we can either talk about all the systemic barriers that we've known about for 400 years, or I can tell you that I personally approved every one of the $4.5 billion of capital, which are Black people, and made them all homeowners. And all the banks you're talking about are my partners. And I have zero complaints from my clients that the banks that Wells Fargo, Bank of America, U.S. Bank, Synovus banks, and Black banks, because we understand the credit box. And the bank, and is there somebody who's racist who works at a bank? Of course there are. Half of the voters today are voting for this other dude whose name I won't mention. And can they screw you over? Sure they can. But if that gets elevated, if you know the system, how to work the system, financial literacy, and you know how to elevate that, you're going to find somebody who's like, oh, no. We can't have that. That should be approved. We're sorry for that. That was a mistake. And that's what we do. We understand how the system works. So yes, if you don't understand how the system works and you put in an application and you're dealing with somebody who does not have really officer approval and they want to discriminate against you on a one-off, sure they can. But on balance, banks don't care what color you are. They're concerned the color is green. If a bank doesn't make a loan, they go broke. It's real talk. The only way they make money is with loans. And half of this country within 10 years is going to be Black and brown. 40% of this country right now is Black and brown. But in 1940, 1950, 90% of America was white. So 20th century, pure racism. Late 20th century, a lot of racism. Early 21st century, you can still find it. But increasingly, it's not economically advantageous to be a racist. You're losing money. The most profitable companies in America are the most diverse. The most profitable regions in America are the most diverse. So all the CEOs I talk to, they want as many qualified customers as they can get. The problem is that many of us are not qualified. And I know it because I see the profiles. So we think we're qualified and we're not. But once you come to us and we educate you, as I keep saying, get your credit score up, your debt down, your savings up, 100% of the time the loan application goes through and you get approved. But let me get back to the positive things. Not all this, I can't chase ghosts of racism and racist Billy Bob and all that kind of stuff. There's good debt and bad debt. What are black people doing? We're doing bad debt. We're financing jewelry. We're financing vacations, all the stuff that depreciates. You need to finance something that appreciates. Good debt is something that appreciates. A home, a small business. Do you know that 96% of our black businesses don't have an employee?
Yes.
96%. You can't build what did I say? You build wealth in your sleep. It's compounding. So that's not a business. That's a self-employment project. So look, racism is real, bias is real, all this stuff is real, but black people's business plan as a race has got to be upgraded. We are not doing the basic things right. I mentioned some of those things. Good debt versus bad debt. Good capitalism versus bad capitalism. Bad capitalism is slavery, as an example. Amber, you mentioned that you were laid off. And I love how your mindset around it, which is like next, right? Which is a winning mindset. But people don't even understand what capitalism is. Let me just tell you, capitalism is a table. There's two people on the side of the table. It's a gladiator sport. It's not personal. The person on the right side of the table, let's call that a capitalist. Their job is to pay you the least and get the most.
Mm-hmm.
The person on the other side table, let's assume that's you. Your job is to get the most pay for the least contribution.
Mm-hmm.
Everybody's doing that. Literally is as basic as I can describe it. What people get upset about is they're upset that the other person's doing their job. And a good negotiation is where both people leave slightly annoyed because nobody got everything they wanted.
I feel like that's not why people get upset. I feel that I think when we think about this term, this idea of a free market, right, and the assumption oftentimes in a free market is that everybody has equal information. And I think it's clear, and I think that's even one of the points you're making, is that everybody doesn't have equal information, right? So people go to you give them more information, you give them financial literacy education, then they're able to do different things. But in a capitalist society, people like us, individuals, don't have the same tools, don't have the same level of information. And even when we get access to that, we can't participate equally and evenly as compared to some organizations. Like you mentioned banks, right? You work with banks. And even many of the banks that you've talked about over the course of decades have regulators within their ranks because they have not been playing fairly, right? So you talk about like, it's not people, right? It's the systems, and the systems don't discriminate. Well, they actually do. And so I think that's the hard part, is when we talk about financial literacy, we are talking about individual actors in this system that, unfortunately, capitalism is racist. It's racial capitalism that rules this nation. And so if we consider that we're living in this racial capitalist state, then how do I, as an individual person, fight the behemoth that is all the things you talked about? How do I escalate issues that I find at my bank? If I have an issue at JP Morgan Chase, how do I work against that system?
So you're wrong, Erika. Capitalism is not racist. Capitalism is capitalism. Capitalism is not personal. Capitalism don't give a damn about you, me, or the man in the balloon, or an opinion. Business is not personal. Capitalism is just simply capital. I just told you, it's a table with two people on the side of it. Now, can you have actors in capitalism that are racist? Of course you can. By the way, just to be very clear about this, because I'm an investor in Wells Fargo. If you have a 401k, you're an investor in Wells Fargo. I'm an investor in Bank of America. So this whole concept that it's a white bank that is a 20th century concept. And by the way,
those banks literally used to have enslaved people on their books.
Erika,
they literally used to have them on their books.
Erika, I listen to you. Now I want you to listen to me. I actually am an expert on money. That's the one thing I absolutely understand. I'm not a preacher. That's not what I'm an expert on. I'm not a civil rights leader. I'm an expert on money. And this is such a healthy conversation because it reminds me the opposite of what Bill Clinton told me, President Clinton. He said it's hard to get somebody to agree to the truth when the lie is paying their paycheck. That's true. And that's when that was the 2008 economic crisis when people punked our neighborhoods and punked people were financially illiterate with horrible mortgages and all that. But that wasn't racism, that was greed. Okay. But the opposite of that is, don't bother me with the facts. I've already made up my mind. So a lot of us are so smart that we won't understand that God gave us 2 ears and 1 mouth, so we listen twice as much as we talk. We think we understand a system we have no clue about. Slavery included, yes, Europeans. It also included Black Africans. It included Arabs. It included Indians from India. How do you get somebody from the middle of Africa to the coast? You have to have people who are Black tribesmen selling people to the coast. So all this stuff is complicated, right? You can't just set a whitewash and say, you can, but you'll be wrong. You can't say that all Republicans are good and all Democrats are bad. No, they're bum factors. 20% of Black people, I'll say it, are bums. 20% of people in my family are bums. 20% of white people are bums. 20% of Republicans and Democrats are bums. There's a bum factor. So 20% of capitalists are what you're talking about. They're bums. But I went to dinner last night with Tony Ressler, who owns the Atlanta Hawks. He's worth $11 billion. I went to the Usher concert. You know how Usher was able to do that concert at State Farm? Because Tony Ressler gave him State Farm Arena. Because Tony Ressler put his arm around Usher and said, I'm gonna help you. I won't tell Usher's business, but Usher has some issues, some challenges in his career. Anyway, some folks who don't look like us, with no reason other than, yes, it was profitable, but they also liked him, hooked Usher up and hooked me up. I did business with Tony Ressler, and I paid him at 7%, not 70, and I made $121 million in 5 years. For every bad example, there's 110 good examples. But if you're only focusing on the bad examples, you'll never see the good ones. So for my friends who say, I hate America. Okay, here's a plane ticket. Bye. No one leaves. Because wherever you go in the world, it's worse. There is no perfect, Erika. It doesn't exist. Racism, so my last comment, and I'll listen to you then. Democracy and capitalism are horrible systems, except for every other system.
So then my question is, because I think if our aspiration as Black people is to acquire knowledge and acquire wealth to be comfortable inside of this system, then I think what you're saying is spot on. I think where we are diverging is that it seems like the goal of financial literacy, if we're saying that financial literacy is the civil rights issue of our time, should be how do we take this tool to dismantle the system, not figure out how to be comfortable in the system, right?
No, that's an emotional argument. Look, if you want to dismantle the system, be a civil rights leader, be a politician. No, that's a different thing. You want to upgrade the system, not dismantle it. It's not about dismantling anything. It's about a radical movement of common sense. You know, you cannot give anybody anything if you're broke. You're broke. Why do people don't mess with Jews? They're not broke. The only freedom left in the world truly is financial freedom. It's the only one no one can take away from you. Political freedom they can take. Women's right to choose, they can take away from you. You social freedom. We're seeing it right in front of us. The only true freedom is financial freedom. The Bible talks about money more than talked about any other topic, Amber. 2,000 different additions in the Bible. And Proverbs says to be poor is not to not have anything. To be poor is not to not do anything. And lazy hands make a man poor. It's not money that's evil. It's the love of money that's evil. So where does philanthropy come from? Where does it come from? You got to make it, before you give it away. Rockefeller, was he a perfect person? No, in some cases he was a horrible person. But you have a Rockefeller Foundation doing really good work. Ford Foundation, was Mr. Ford a wonderful person? I don't know, never knew him. I know his grandson, he's on my board, Henry Ford III. But the Ford Foundation is killing it, doing great work in the world. And you would not have a middle class without Henry Ford and the Ford Motor Company. What I'm saying is there is no perfect. I mean, whatever good example you gave me, whatever example you want to give me, I'll tell you a counter example. You tell me perfect. And socialism comes from capitalism. We can just cover that ground right now. All socialism is a taxing system. And the communist countries have all chosen capitalism. China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, who want to be us, by the way, they're all chosen capitalism and trying to cheat at the game to take us out. So where's the perfect? I'll wait.
No, and I don't think I or Amber were suggesting that there is a perfect system, right? I think that what we are maybe advocating for is that there is a better way, and that especially like to the idea of 20% bump factor, right? Like that's just a notion. I just don't subscribe to the bum factor for sure. I also don't subscribe to the factor that there are certain ethnic groups who are doing better in this country, but there are reasons for the fact that they have been able to have some sort of financial success.
What's the
And so I
reasons?
think we have to look to those.
What's the reasons?
Oftentimes those reasons, I'm sorry?
Why is a Nigerian, why, you can go on my Instagram pages right there. I list all of the incomes in America, all the incomes. You should pull it up. And you tell me, why is a Black person from Jamaica or a Black person from one of the 54 African countries, or an Indian person from India, or a dark Asian, why are they able to be the top incomes in America? And why are African Americans at the very bottom of the list? By the way, whites are right in the middle. They're not the white people who are supposed to control everything. They're not at the top. So what's the reason for that?
Yeah, so it has a lot to do with the vestiges of colonialism, right? So if you're talking about India as a colonial piece of Great Britain, what happened, and also immigration policy. So if you think about the immigration policy that we have around H-1B visas, we are recruiting very highly educated, highly talented people to come to this country from India. We're not recruiting people from low caste systems who come here from India. The people who
That's not true. The number one immigrant in America is an African. African. There are no H-1 visas for Africans. That's just.
I didn't finish telling you the rest. I'll go ahead and finish telling you. So in the case of Indians, which you brought up, right? That is the reason. So we are recruiting people who are very highly educated, people who are already of high castes when they come here. So we're not recruiting the poverty-stricken people of India. In the same way, the Nigerian people and other Africans who, for the most part, right, if you're talking about people from West Africa, from Nigeria and Ghana, we are recruiting highly educated people already who, again, are already very affluent because they come here. And they are able to be affluent as a result of, for the most part, being colonial subjects of whether it was the case of Ghana and the UK. And so what happens is those colonial forces don't just exist in those nations. The system of colonialism is a worldwide system. And so we all live under it. And so that's how that plays out in terms of the incomes that you see from those people coming here. So it's not an accident that has happened. And because of the racial capitalist nature that we live under, because Black American people were subjugated to, of course, enslavement in this country, also Jim Crow, also mass incarceration. Because of those things, then we don't have those same levels of education and income that those other people have.
How do you explain me?
How do I explain what about you?
I think because I think the system is always invested in allowing exceptions to the rule. I think that's the explanation, is that I think you would agree with that you are an exception. That
how do you explain my 4.5 million clients?
Well, I don't think all of your clients are exceptions to the same degree as you. I think you are doing righteous work, helping people improve their financial situation, right? They're doing better. But in terms of the exceptions that the system holds out, like, look at this person, look at how they came from the bottom quarter to the top 1%. I think that in order for any sort of inequitable system to exist, you have to condition people to pursue the exceptionals and the exceptions to the rules, because that distracts them from wanting to dismantle it. Because then you believe, well, if he can do it, I can do it.
I'm going to give you guys 2 more factoids, and then I'm going to end the interview, because you guys are absolutely committed to non-facts. And I love your passion. I wish you the best of success. I have no idea how you're going to help people not be broke if you're telling them you're going to have to go into basically pitch battle against the largest economy in the world and the sole superpower, and your plan is not to help them master that idea. Your plan is somehow to psychologically, or I don't know, philosophically or politically or something, dismantle it in your lifetime. And I don't know which. I'd love to see your plan. I actually have a plan, but that's a topic for another day. What I'm not often befuddled. I have no idea why you wanted me on this podcast, because anybody who's done any research on me at all knows that I'm obsessed with facts, not opinions. I like facts because I like math because it doesn't have an opinion. Yeah. Here is the facts on race, Erika. This is easy to check out. It's U.S. Census data.
Sure.
Right. The highest income, median household income in America is an Indian American with $152,000. So you say that's an H-1 visa. Okay, hold on. The second highest income is Filipino American. Let me help you out. There's no H-1 visas for Filipino Americans. There's no program at all to recruit or to help Filipino Americans. $106,000 average income. The third highest, Asian Americans, Chinese Americans, Russian Americans, European Americans, Australian Americans, Japanese Americans, British Americans, you can understand all those, Italian Americans, German Americans, Canadian Americans, white Americans. White Americans are down on this list, $79,000. Nigerian Americans are $78,005, right next to, within a couple $100 of white Americans. There's no benefits for Nigerian Americans that are special or unique. They understand hustle. They understand capitalism. Nigerians are brilliant at hustle, and they become owners and small business owners and wealth creators. Mexican Americans are right below that at $66,000. It goes on and on. Hispanic Americans, and right at the bottom, Native American Indians at $58,000 and African Americans at $51,000. Now, I think we're brilliant, and what I know is every time I teach somebody what I'm talking about here, they do just like that. Their income goes up, their stress goes down, their home ownership goes up, their stock portfolio goes up, their wealth goes up, their optionality expands, they become voters, they start kicking bums out of office and getting people in office that represent their interests. The neighborhoods are calm, their kids go to college, they're living the American dream, and that's how you control the system. All the rest of this is just conversation.
And to be clear, again, I'm very interested in and appreciate financial literacy, right? Like, I don't think either Amber nor I. What'd you say?
I don't know if you do, because you've been fighting it the entire interview.
I haven't. I'm actually not against financial literacy at all, right? Like, I think we believe in financial literacy for as helpful a tool as it can be. I think the point is financial literacy and what it can do, which I'm still not sure necessarily what, the rules of money, I guess, is financial literacy.
It's a mindset. That's what it is.
Financial literacy is a mindset. Okay.
It's not a program. It's not a tool. It's not a widget. It's a mindset. And whether you believe you can or whether you believe you can't, you're absolutely right. Is the glass half full or is it half empty? Depends who's looking at the glass. And whether you believe you can't. So the problem is your mindset is this system's corrupt and capitalism's racist. The minute that is your mindset, you cannot win. You will not win. You will not win. Your mindset is everything. And I'm going to have to go, but let me just say this. And I'm going to say this with the most vigor I can. Please, listeners, listen to this. The only true poverty you can't control is sustenance poverty. A roof over your head, food on the table, and reasonable health care. That should be illegal in humane society. Everybody should have the sustenance to live a decent life. Now, that's immoral and unethical in any society. All other forms of poverty are mindset. I can give a homeless guy $1 million because I feel sorry for him. He'll be broke in 6 months unless his mindset changes. I know I was homeless. I lived in my Jeep for 6 months. I'm not talking about some concept. I'm talking about things I've seen and I've lived. And I have enough examples where I literally don't have an exception to the rules that I'm telling you about. Anybody who does what I'm telling you to do, and yes, they're not going to be a John Hope Bryant. Hopefully, they'll be twice as big. But you can be Amber, you can be Erika, you can be Tim Burt. In other words, everybody's role. Some people shouldn't want the stress that I have. I have $1.5 million just payroll every 2 weeks. Who wants
every 2 weeks?
So some people just want. I want a home. I want to go on vacation once a year, twice a year. I want to hang with my family and my friends. Okay, but here's the ultimate reason why this conversation doesn't work. Everybody's watching this, whether you like it or not. You're a capitalist. You work at an hourly job. That's human capital. You work at a salary job. That's human capital. You're trading your human capital for a salary, which is the lowest form of risk. And now you have a C-suite job. That's a fairly high level of risk in the corporate environment. You could be fired overnight. They can call you at midnight and call you on the weekends. And when you're a small business owner, you bunch through that. Now you want some rewards for your efforts. So now you want to take human capital and turn it into financial capital. Now you're a small business owner. But if you have a business plan, you can still win, like a franchise. The craziest version of capitalism is me, an entrepreneur. Complete, utter, absolute risk and complete possible return. Everybody's living in a capitalist system, whether you like it or not. The question is whether you can master it. And arguing about the concept of this system is, I think, rather ridiculous. We have to master the system. Jesus got angry one time when he turned over the tables of the money changers in the temple. Other than that, it was a productive conversation because that was about greed. So look, I love you guys. I love your energy. I love your aspiration. Wish you well. And this has been an interesting conversation.
Yeah, thanks so much for joining us. And just to be clear, this was not supposed to be like, our goal was not to be antagonistic, right? We were just talking about issues of financial literacy. And also, to be clear, your team reached out to us about being on the show.
My team didn't. Maybe a PR firm did. I don't call anybody.
Well, I didn't either.
All right,
So,
well,
just to be clear about that part. Thank you so much.
All right. God bless you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Oh my God.
So, brokers, we're back. You'll notice our guest has left us. And we just think for this episode, we should probably come back and have a discussion about what just happened. Say something, Amber.
We gonna let y'all in the group chat next episode. I have nothing. I have nothing to say.
Whitney.
I am Whitney. I have nothing. Okay.
Okay, so y'all, to be continued on another episode of Brokish.
All right, good people. Thanks for listening to Brokish. For more episodes, visit us at brokish.com or subscribe, and Brokish will get direct deposited into your favorite podcast app on the 1st and 15th. Share Brokish with your friends and join the conversation on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. Music for Brokish is Come Get Some by Blank and Kit. Until next time, goodbye and good luck.